Welcome. Okay, so we'll start with intention, as we often do, and we'll maybe approach it slightly differently. And I will be provocative and just suggest to you that your true intention, why you're really here, what you really desire, doesn't have a name, but we could call it, just to have something to describe it as, we call it peace. So what does that mean? Because superficially, we could either agree or disagree. You know, if you agree, you say, oh, yes, 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 definitely, I want peace. If you disagree, then you disagree, I don't want peace, I want something else. But if we take a closer look, which is what I'm inviting you to right now, to look closely. So whether you agree or you disagree, it doesn't matter. Now just look and see, what is this agreement or this disagreement? Whether there's agreement or disagreement, what is this actually? Is this worth giving your attention to? Is this worth stopping short of true satisfaction to latch hold of this agreement or disagreement? So you can maybe start to see how often it is that you settle for something that's completely unsatisfying. We all do it, but just you for yourself can see how you settle for something that does not satisfy, and just watch how you're doing it now. And then in the next moment, and in the next moment, you settle for something that doesn't really give you what you actually want. It's at best, and this is rare even that this occurs, but at best what it gives you is some sort of temporary, false satiation, but it's not actually really satisfying. So that can be hard to see. I mean, by hard to see, I don't mean it's actually that, I don't mean that it's difficult to see, but I mean it can be challenging to be willing to admit, to be willing to be that intimate with yourself, that vulnerable with yourself, that open to finally just admit, I have been settling, I have been stopping short, I have been shortchanging myself. And actually, all of the whatever progress I think I've made, well, this is good news too, by the way. I'll get to that in a moment, maybe, if I remember. But whatever progress I've made, it's not adequate, and it's not actually, it all kind of crumbles. It's not worth anything, because I have to admit, everything, all of that is something I've been clinging to. It's something I've been stopping short and holding on to that because I think that's going to save me, or that's going to help me in some way. So that's the, we'll say, bad news. The good news, the same news, is also good news, which is that if you say, well, I'm getting nowhere. I've made no progress. I'm frustrated. I'm discouraged. I'm disappointed. Good news is you don't need any of that. You don't need to overcome any of that. You don't need to make progress. You don't need to get anywhere. All of that is just the flip side. It's the inversion of the progress that you think that you've made. So they go hand in hand. They're just inversions of one another. But in either case, what's happening is there's a grasping. So just see that there's a grasping. And I say grasping, but there are many ways that you might perceive that. You may not perceive it exactly as a grasping. That's just one term that gives a certain flavor to it, but it has other, we could say that there are many flavors, many sub flavors, many different qualities to it. So you might experience it or perceive it slightly differently, and that's okay. That's totally fine. You might perceive it as a kind of contraction, or you might perceive it as a zoning out, or you might perceiving it as a, oh gosh, so many possibilities. So I won't even try to enumerate them. But you'll know it by, I think we could say there's a kind of quality to the experience, which is a dissatisfaction. So now you can see perhaps that really, and this is just this is like the human condition. This has been described by so many people. I'm not alone in this, but you can see it for yourself. It has to be seen for yourself. If you don't see it for yourself, if you're just taking it as somebody else's word, it doesn't really help you because it's an invitation. So when somebody says it, it's an invitation. It's like they're reaching out, and you need to take the step to take hold of their hand in order to make the connection. And so that, what I mean there is you need to look for yourself. You need to see how it's true for yourself, but you have to see how this dissatisfaction has been here day in and day out for as long as you can remember, and that you have used every strategy that you could come up with, and every ounce of energy that you could muster in order to try and defeat it or outrun it or outwit it, or all these various strategies, but to overcome, to succeed, to dominate, to be victorious, to evade, all of these various strategies, and just see how that's true. Again, now you might agree with that or you might disagree. See, we're back to the same thing. You might agree, you might disagree. Actually, doesn't matter. What matters is just that you're willing to look for yourself. And that's the beauty of this, is that it really is not about whether you understand it intellectually, because as you surely know, I mean, I hope you know, the intellectual understanding also ends up being totally unsatisfying. So don't worry about the intellectual understanding. The intellectual understanding is only one of many pointers. But it's a pointer ultimately. So if it's a useful pointer for you, great. But it has a limitation. Every pointer does. Everything has a limitation by definition. Everything has a limitation. That's what a thing is a limitation. If there's no limitation, we can't describe it as a thing. The moment we conjure a thing, it's something distinct from something else. So it has a limitation, which is fine. That's its nature. We don't need to go to war with that either, but it's just to recognize that it has a limitation. So ultimately what we're looking for is something that's unlimited, because only that can give us the true satisfaction that we're looking for. So hopefully that's clear. You have to look for yourself and just see how what you're really looking for has to be unlimited. It cannot be something limited, Because if it's limited, what that means is it comes and it goes. So sometimes be here and sometimes it won't be here. It will also be then thereby conditional. So there are certain conditions in which it is present and other conditions in which it's not present. So that's not the true satisfaction that you're looking for, because the true satisfaction that you're looking for is also, we could also describe that satisfaction as a deep rest, a relief. So you have to look and see how that's true, how what you really want, more than all of the superficial things that you think you want, is this deep rest. So the rest of total innocence, you know, this rest of, you don't even know of any possible threat, that kind of rest. So there's no anticipation of anything. There's no worry about anything. There's no apprehension. Deep rest, complete rest. That's what you really long for. So you have to look and see how that's true. Why is that important? Because if you don't see that, if you can't really acknowledge that, then you know what's going to keep on happening is you'll keep on doing, chasing after the same superficial, ultimately unsatisfying things that you've been compulsively chasing after your whole life. So now that might seem like an unpleasant prospect, maybe a kind of ugly, and we don't want to see that because maybe we take it personally. Oh, not me. I'm not like that. I'm not. You're talking about everybody else, but you're not talking about me. I'm not like that. I'm more intelligent than that. I've got more experience in that. This is one of the things, the strategies the mind might come up with. But it's very helpful, maybe even essential, to be willing to see this impersonally, to see it's not personal. You know, all of this conditioning, you didn't bring it about. You didn't, at what point did you consciously say, you know what I want to do? I want to pile on a whole bunch of misery. You didn't do that. You didn't at any point say, you know what I want to do? I want to chase after unsatisfying things. You know what I want to do? I want to be unhappy. You know what I want? I want to be deluded. You didn't choose any of that consciously. Nobody did. So just be willing to see that, just to admit, I didn't do this. I didn't choose this consciously. This conditioning is just what I find myself here. I find myself with this conditioning. So I was asleep. This conditioning came about. Now I'm awake in this instant, right now. Then you don't have to take it personally. You just see, okay, look, there's all this conditioning. The tendency, the habit, is to chase after things that are dissatisfying. It's just a habit, day in and day out. Fall back into that same habit. Everybody's got a slightly different take on it. Everybody's has their unique take on that conditioning, but it's some variation on that theme. So some people are chasing after sex, and some people are chasing after money, and some people are chasing after power, and some people are chasing after safety, and some people are chasing after, you know, this, that, and the other, all kinds of things. And nobody is immune. Everybody finds themselves in this. So I won't deny it. There's at least a possibility, because anything is possible. There's a possibility that there may be, or there could be, humans who would be immune to that, but it's extremely unlikely. Even the most so-called enlightened, you know, if you've been seeking in any way for any amount of time, then surely you know, in whatever, whether it's in a spiritual or self-help or self-actualization or anything, I mean, anything, you see that the people who are held up as the having achieved the pinnacle of whatever that aspiration is, the most successful, they're flawed. Now, flawed, that's a loaded term, but you can see they're not, they certainly don't appear, at the very least we could say appear, they don't appear to be completely free of the conditioning. The conditioning is still there. Less, maybe, but they're not, it's not, the conditioning hasn't completely gone away. So now recognize what, now you could, there's, if the mind gets hold of that and you know that it does this, it hardens and it becomes cynical and it says, oh, well, they were just frauds. They're just frauds. There's a real true success out there, and it's what I think it is, but they just weren't it. They were fakes. So I'll just keep seeking for that ultimate ideal. But what you have to see, that won't actually be satisfying. See, even if it was possible to achieve that, now notice what it is that you're seeking after there. It's conditional. I'll be okay. I'll be free. I'll be happy. I'll be at peace when I'm perfect. When I've gotten rid of all the conditioning, when there's no longer any compulsion, when I no longer have any negative thoughts, when I no longer have any sense of separate identity, then I'll be okay. Well, good luck. Why bother though? Why bother? Because that won't be satisfying. This is what you have to recognize. So you're chasing after a mirage. So now, again, the invitation is now. So you have to look now. And you might start to notice, hopefully, because this is it's not a conscious intention, but it's nonetheless, I guess, intended to be provocative. Most of the time we think, oh, no, I don't want to be provoked. I want to be at peace. I want to be happy. I want to be spiritual. But see, that's conditional, because anytime any provocation comes along, you say, how dare you? How dare you provoke me? How dare you disturb my peace? And then you see, it was a wolf in sheep's clothing, pretending to be peaceful. So now who's the real fraud? Now don't take that on yourself. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm suggesting that there is fraudulence happening and that you have been taking that on yourself. You have been assuming that as your identity. You have been doing that. Behind the scenes, you're aware of this fraudulence. You don't like it. None of us do. It's very uncomfortable. We don't want to be called out on it. But here again, don't take it personally. Just see that all of this is totally impersonal. The conditioning was not of your conscious choice. You did not say, I want to be a deluded jerk. So whatever the conditioning that you see, don't take it personally. Just be willing to see it. You might have any number of thoughts about this as we're sitting here. You might think, well, when are we going to get to the real stuff? When's the good stuff going to happen? When am I going to get enlightened? When am I going to get the secret technique? When is it going to work for me? When am I going to be free? And what I want you to know is that it's right now. And that's not just empty words. That's true. It's right now. It's in the seeing that the discovery of true freedom is available. If you don't see it, then unconsciously you're assuming that it's you. You're taking it personally without even knowing it. And we're all playing this game, locked into this unconscious cycle of trying to get rid of or avoid seeing. It's like, I don't know if you did this as a child. When I was a child, I was in the dark, in my bed, afraid. And I imagined out there in the dark, all the, the monsters and the boogeyman and Dracula, they're all there. And I pulled the covers over my head. And that's what we're doing, metaphorically, is we're pulling the covers over our head, and you have to see it won't work. If there really is a boogeyman and a monster and a Dracula out there, the cover ain't gonna stop him. And so whatever evils we're so afraid to see, we have to tell the truth that our denying them does not actually work to negate them. In fact, what it does is the opposite. It's what empowers them. That's what gives them their sole reality. They have no independent reality. There is none of these things that we don't want to see. None of the things that we don't want to admit. None of those things have independent reality. But they have a dependent reality, which they feed off of our avoidance. See, it takes so much effort to avoid. It generates so much fear, so much tension, so much anxiety, so much friction. And that is siphoned off, and it generates and gives reality to these fictions. The fiction of our suffering, the fiction that I'm broken, unworthy, not good enough, not quite there yet. Still need to know a little bit more, still need to do more practice, still need to be more perfect. So many different variations on that, but you find the ones that fit for you, and then just tell the truth about it, which is that they only exist because you avoid just seeing them. So right now in this moment is the opportunity just to see. And if you allow it, this is a powerful opportunity. See, we don't, when we're by ourselves, we may not tap into the same kind of force. But there's a force here that if you allow it, it will take hold of you and it will fix you, and you will be made to just see. So that's possible, but it won't happen against your will. That's important to understand. It requires your acceptance, your willingness. It's only if you say yes. And that yes has to be all the way through, all the layers, all the levels. And you might be thinking, oh, I don't know how to do that. You don't know how to do that, and yet you do know how to do that. So you don't know how to do it at the level of mind, because as long as you keep thinking, how do I do it? You're blocking it. But the moment you just say, yes, I'm willing to take the plunge. It's like just taking a plunge. You just leap. That's all that's required. You just leap and then just allow. Right now, within yourself. So just don't make any effort. Don't make any effort to grab hold of anything, to protect yourself, to understand it, to file it away or categorize it or any of these things. And what happens? You just are finding yourself here in this ungraspable aliveness, as long as you allow it. So whatever thoughts may arise, they're fine. They're not an obstacle. So you allow the thoughts, just don't grasp them. And if you grasp one, that's fine. Don't grasp the next thought that says, oh, shame on me for grasping a thought. How do I let go of it? See, the grasping, you never actually grasp hold of the thought. You're just grasping. And the instant that you stop, there's no more grasping. So just be willing to do that now. Just let go. And whatever sensations arise, you just don't grasp them either. And you might say, I don't know how to do that, but you do. You just don't grasp. And you just are witness to whatever it is that occurs. So there will be thoughts that will occur. There will be sensations that occur. There will be images that occur. All of these things happen. But they're happening in this openness. And the most important thing is to recognize that there's nothing, there's no, nobody's, if you have a PhD, you don't have any advantage here over a child. You don't have a disadvantage necessarily either. But it doesn't matter how much training, how much practice. You could be a lifelong meditator or not. It doesn't necessarily give you any advantage. All that's really required is just your sincerity, your willingness just to be innocent as you truly are, which means just wide open. And then you see everything that's here, everything that you've judged, avoided, disowned. And you notice the compulsions that are there, trying to avoid, to flinch, cringe, justify. So tightly wound, ready to spring at the slightest provocation. How dare you? I get to do that. No, you just relax. So you see what I mean? How tightly wound, they're constantly wanting to spring, sink its teeth into something and just keep relaxing. And just see. It's not about going blank. Blankness may happen. But it's not about going blank. It's not about not going blank. It's not about seeing light, experiencing light, or not experiencing light or seeing light. All these things are fine. You could consider it to be the most mundane experience, the most spiritual experience. You could consider it to be inner experience or outer experience. You could consider it to be exciting or dull. Doesn't matter. Just notice that all the experience comes and goes. One thought after another, after another, after another. One sensation after another. And all of this is occurring in this openness. So you may experience eventually you may experience a kind of ecstasy. Now, that experience will come and go. So it's not the ultimate necessarily, but that is, from my, let's say, somewhat limited experience, I perceive that it's a fairly reliable experience that will come about eventually, but it comes and goes. So it's not, as I say, it's not the ultimate, but that is, let's say, kind of like a mile marker. Okay. Now, along the way, before that, before things open up into this ecstasy, anything else is possible. And there's no set progression. So it's not that one thing is better than the next. So just be willing, have the courage and the willingness just to be witness to whatever it is that's here. And you're seeing your own conditioning. It's really, I emphasize that because it's so important to see that that's what this is. All this stuff that we've taken so personally, all these ideas that we've believed either that we needed to defend because that's an important part of who I am. I'm right. I have important experience and knowledge, and I know things, and I've got to hold on to that. Or things that we really have to work hard to deny and reject because they're so objectionable to us, so offensive. You know, this sense of shame, wrongness, self-disgust. All the things that are there, if they're lurking in the shadows. And as soon as you really open and allow, they'll come out. So you just have to be willing to see them as they show themselves, and then don't make any effort. You're just seeing that they're conditioning. You don't need to take them personally, and you don't need to fix them or get rid of them or polish them or do anything. And the more that you're willing to really be witness, the more you'll see. The more you'll see of how much of your life has been completely run by this unconscious identity that's composed of nothing other than this unconscious conditioning, some heap of beliefs about yourself and life, about what it's all about, what it means to be successful, the importance of being successful. What it means to be good. The importance of safety, how to be safe, what's required for safety. So as you see all of this, it's very likely that you'll perceive some discomfort. Like I was saying, eventually it's likely, seems fairly reliable that eventually it opens up into ecstasy. That's temporary. So we'll address what happens after that in a moment. But before that, there's going to be discomfort. Now, don't think, oh, I'm not experiencing enough discomfort, so I guess I'm not doing it right. No, I'm not saying that. You don't have to try. You don't have to dig. You don't have to see. You just notice the discomfort that's under that even. So you just allow yourself to sink and settle into that, to stop making the effort to come back up to the surface for another gulp of air. Just let yourself be pulled down into the muck. And it's uncomfortable to surrender what it is that you've thought yourself to be. Because it registers as a kind of death. Because you see, we're so identified with all of these notions. Well, but if I don't do that, if I don't believe that, if I don't cling to that, then I'll be a failure. Then I'll be a bad person. Then I'll lose. Then I'll have nothing. I'll starve to death. My family will starve. You see, all these kinds of stories that we've been telling ourselves, beating ourselves up, whipping ourselves to stay in the game. You got to, you got to, you got to keep on going. And here the invitation is stop. So there can be this discomfort. The discomfort can be minor, or it can be like your bones are being crushed and you're being suffocated. One's not better than the other. I'm not suggesting that you should aim for the bone crushing suffocation kind of discomfort. If you notice, if you have that tendency, just see that too. That's just the conditioning. That's another thought. Oh, that's how I can succeed. Bone crushing suffocation. I'll go for that. So as I said, eventually it opens up into a kind of ecstasy, total freedom, bliss, joy, profound rest. So some of you may be perceiving that now. It's a possibility. And it's important for me to point out, as I have already, but to really emphasize that that's another experience. It's temporary. It comes and it goes. It's nice, but it's an experience that comes and goes. So when that goes, as it inevitably will, then the question is, okay, then what happens? Well, you want to guess? More discomfort. So now you might be thinking, wait a second, what kind of scam have I gotten myself into? Is this just eternal discomfort punctuated by moments of ecstasy? I'm not sure that I like that idea. Just see, that's, but I mean, that's my thought that I'm interjecting, but whatever comes up for you, just see. That's just more conditioning. So this, now there's this alternation, ecstasy, discomfort. So, first we experience this ecstasy. We say, whoa, whoa, give me more of that. What do I have to do? Well, or we don't. Maybe we say, whoa, that was too much, because that can happen too. We think, oh, I just want that. I want the greatest. You get the greatest and whoa, not ready for that. Too much. It's drinking from the fire hose. So, it could be either way, but maybe eventually we have some experience that's just right. It's just the just right level of ecstasy. And we say, wow, finally, finally, I've discovered it. Now, how do I get that more? I need that all the time. And then, then we fall back into this discomfort, cravings, seekings, grasping, defending. Oh God, how do I get back to that? And then again, okay, now how do I hold on to this? So up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And most people never, by the way, most people will never in this lifetime actually recognize this true openness. So just to have an experience of it, just to glimpse it, just to have one instant is an enormous blessing. I know the cynical mind says, yeah, whatever. I'm serious about that though. So I encourage you to notice that and tell the truth about that, and notice it again, just as all of this conditioning is not yours, you didn't choose it, you didn't, at least not consciously. So too, the blessings that occur are not yours either to claim. You can't claim that as yours. You can't say, I did it. But you notice the tendency to do that. Tendency is to say, oh, I did it. Now I'm going to do it more. But the deeper truth is, and you have to look and see it for yourself, that you didn't do it. In this moment, in this one instant of this total openness, there's no you doing it. There's only openness. You are that openness, but there's no separate you who can claim it. Now we're getting closer to seeing what's happening here in this alternation, in this surrender to this ecstasy. What's happening is there's a temporary dissolution of the sense of separation. And then what happens is that sense of separation returns, and it wants to, because it's nature, it's a thing that's just constantly, it's craving, it's a perception of lack, it's a perception of insecurity. So its nature is to try to get more, acquire more in order to satisfy itself and protect itself. And so the instant it returns, what it does is it says, ooh, that was great, I want it, I did it. How do I get more of it? So it files it away as just, and diminishes it as just another experience. So there is an experience, but then there's what's not the experience. And this sense of separation is only able to grasp the experience or grasp at the experience. But the what's not an experience is what's actually important here. So now we have to be willing to leave the mind behind for a moment, because that's a statement the mind can't do anything with other than just spin around like a dog chasing his tail. So notice, though, that in this one instant, so remember that all of this is all something that you have to actually inquire directly as we're here together. This is always the invitation. It's not useful as just some knowledge to file away. This is always an invitation to the direct inquiry now. So as we're inquiring together, as we've been inquiring together, so long as you've been sincere, then the truth is, whether you even acknowledge it or not, there have been these moments of surrender. There have been moments of dissolution. And now what's possible is that you can acknowledge that. You can acknowledge that, yes, there have been, over the last 50 minutes or so, there have been these moments of surrender, of dissolution of the separate self. There's been this surrendering to and as this unitive oneness, boundlessness. And then here's what needs to be pointed out. So I'll point it out, because we can have the experience can occur, but if it's not pointed out to us that there's something that's not the experience, then we'll overlook that. So this is the most important part. That independent of the experience, you exist. So the experience is coming and going in you. The ups and downs are coming in you. All of the perception is occurring in you. And even in the instant in which all of that dissolves and there is no experience, there's nothing to be grasped, there's no grasping happening, there's just total openness. There's no thought, there's no thinker. And you are. Now, this is one of those things to the mind, yeah, it's nothing. The mind will shrug it off. Yeah, whatever. That's what it says. I already know that. That's a great one. Yeah, I already know that. But don't fall for that. The mind doesn't know it. Nobody knows it. Nobody can know it. Because the knowing function in this sense of the use of the word is absent in the moment of this dissolution. So right now, you might notice, actually, if you're really observing carefully, you might notice that prior to, and actually during and after, every arising phenomenon, so every thought, every sensation, every image, everything, even prior to the arising of this subtle notion of separation, the subtle notion that I am the experiencer, even prior to that, there's simply awareness. Now, awareness is a word, so don't make the mistake of saying, oh yeah, I already know that. No, it's not what's known, it's what is knowing. And you are that. You can't deny it. If you think about it, you'll tie yourself up in knots, but it's just plainly obvious right in this instant right now. So here, beyond the experience, before the experience, during the experience, untouched by the experience, you are. Now, the experience, which you've mistaken yourself for, which we all mistake ourselves for, obviously comes and goes. So there's a lack of continuity in the experience. It's just coming in and out, in and out, in and out, pulsing. What gives the sense of continuity is what it is that's continuous. And that's you, obviously, because you know that you're continuous. Before your name and your body and your memories and your story of yourself. And before all of that identity, there's you. And that is here now, always. So in the remaining few moments that we have for this portion of our time together today, I'd like to start from this recognition. So look for yourself and see that here you are and that everything is rising and falling in you. So the thoughts come and go in you, sensations come and go in you. Everything is coming and going in you, everything. And you can just watch it right now. You can just see it. And in this space, which is just a word, but we'll use that word, in this space in which everything is coming and going, see if you can find any boundary to it. See if you can find any limitation to it. And see if you can find anything that can oppose it. I'm not talking in theory, I'm talking in actual experience directly. To see, is there anything that can oppose it? So hopefully you can recognize this, we could call it a quality of your true nature, that it's independent and unopposable. So there's nothing, we could say, since there's nothing that can oppose it, there's nothing that can impinge on it, there's nothing that can obstruct it, we could say it's unconditional. Unconditional isness or unconditional presence. So this is your actual nature, and this is what's satisfying to you. To know I am. Everything else comes and goes, but I am without having to know what I am. I am. Nothing can harm me. Nothing can diminish me. Nothing can augment me. Nothing can bring me more satisfaction or less satisfaction. So now the inquiry is to explore this possibility of allowing the full and free expression of this deepest truth at all levels of our experience. So even within the individual storyline, even within our bodies and our minds. So let's take a moment just to imagine this possibility of this unconditional being, unconditional peace, expressing in our minds, in our bodies, in our relationships, and in our homes, our families, our communities. And just see whatever obstacles or objections arise as you imagine that. And don't go to war with them. Don't try to ignore them. Don't try to fight with them. Don't try to correct them. Don't even judge them. Rather, just be willing to see them, because it's in the non-judgmental seeing that we liberate them and ourselves. So here, again, it's important that we're starting from this direct recognition of this boundless, formless wholeness that's without an opposite. because normally we start from the conditional, limited notion of our separate identity. And then, of course, we use that to justify all of the limitations. But instead, here we're starting from this most basic acknowledgement of the truth of who we are. And then we're acknowledging implicitly that all the identity arises from this formless awareness. So there are no limitations here. The limitations exist in the definition, but that definition is entirely malleable within this formless awareness. So we just are now seeing what the current definition is, where the current limitations are, where we say, no, true peace can't express here, and just see those beliefs, those limitations, those memories, all the evidence used to support the current position, the current identity that's been ultimately dissatisfying. And here we're exploring this possibility now of the full and free expression of what it is that is satisfying at all levels of experience. So one more time, just completely surrender everything and just allow yourself to recognize that here in this moment, the deepest truth is a truth of complete openness, complete surrender, complete formlessness, and that there's nothing that opposes this or that could oppose it. There's nothing separate from this, and there's nothing even that could be get a foothold to even begin to form the notion of opposition here. And then one more time, just envision, gently imagine the possibility of the full and free expression of this unconditional peace that is the truth at the heart of being into your mind and your body and your relationships and your home and your community. And then just allow yourself to be a non-judgmental witness to whatever arises, whatever limiting beliefs, objections, obstacles that arise as you envision this possibility of the full and free expression of unconditional peace at all levels of experience. And you're just seeing them non-judgmentally. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to fix them. Nothing needs to be done. Just be willing to see them. That's all. No matter how true they might seem, no matter how ugly they might seem, no matter how painful they might seem, just be willing to just see them without trying to do anything. And know that in the seeing, you are liberating them and yourself and all being. And then just notice if maybe there's a possibility that has opened up of maybe a question mark there, maybe a sliver of light shining in of new possibility of, well, I don't know. So I guess maybe something might be possible. And maybe you don't notice that. But if you do, then just allow that. You don't need to hold on to it. You don't need to try and force anything there. You just notice it. That's all. Just notice that openness, that new possibility that's sprouting there. So thank you as always for joining me. I genuinely appreciate your courage and your willingness and your humility and your patience. And I sincerely thank you I believe that through our collective willingness to inquire, we are producing true change. So thank you. And for those who are here live, we can stay on for the Q&A. So let me just end this recording and switch over the settings.